Chosen one, while the world sleeps on your potential and doubts your calling, God has been watching and whispering. You've felt it, haven't you? That unshakable vision in your spirit, the one that wakes you up at night, that tugs at your soul when everything around you says, "Let it go," but still, it burns. You've been misunderstood. You've been told you're aiming too high, believing too much, hoping too big. People have tried to shrink your vision down to what makes sense to them. But let me tell you something straight from the throne room. They're not the author of your dream. God is. There are people who look at your dream and scoff, not because it's impossible, but because their own imagination is too small to contain what God has poured into you. And they think they're doing you a favor by being realistic. But the truth is, what's unrealistic to man is often prophetic in the eyes of heaven. Your dream isn't too big. It's just that their faith has never seen anything like it. And so here you are, carrying a vision no one around you seems to understand. You've started to wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe you were foolish. Maybe that vision you once had, the book, the ministry, the mission, the business, the breakthrough, maybe it was too much. Maybe it was just emotion, just excitement, just a passing phase. But listen carefully. God doesn't waste imagination. He doesn't plant purpose without a plan. That dream inside you wasn't born from ego. It was born from eternity. This is a holy interruption. Not to shame you for your doubt, but to awaken you from it. You've been playing small in a world God called you to change. You've been dimming your light to make others comfortable in their shadows. But now, heaven is clearing the air, lifting the fog, and speaking directly to your soul. You were never meant to fit in with small thinkers. You were designed to shake nations, to break generational chains, to build what hasn't been built, to speak what hasn't been said, and to walk paths no one around you has ever dared to take. You were made to stand out, not because you're better, but because you're chosen. And being chosen comes with pressure. It comes with misunderstanding. It comes with moments of isolation and deep doubt. But it also comes with divine power, heavenly backing, and supernatural provision. Chosen one, the reason your dream looks too big to others is because God gave it to you, not them. This is the moment the lie breaks. This is the moment the chains of small thinking fall off your spirit like old grave clothes. This is the moment you remember who you are. Because if God called you, if heaven assigned it, if your spirit trembles with purpose every time you try to lay it down, then maybe, just maybe, it's not too big. Maybe it's perfectly in sync with the size of the God who gave it to you. And now I need to ask you something. What if the reason you've been uncomfortable, anxious, and restless lately isn't because something's wrong, but because your destiny is trying to stretch its wings inside a cage of compromise? What if the tension you feel is divine labor? God pushing your dream from conception into birth. Don't ignore that stirring. Don't silence that fire. You're not crazy. You're not delusional. You're not dreaming too big. You're just surrounded by people who think too small. But how do you hold on to a God-sized vision in a world that keeps trying to shrink it? How do you protect that calling from the voices of doubt, fear, and familiarity? That's what we're about to uncover. There's something sacred about a dream that won't die. Not every dream is divine, but when God is the one who plants it, you can't shake it, even when you try. You can run from it. You can bury it. You can drown it in busyness, in silence, in fear. But it still pulses like a heartbeat in the background of your life. That's how you know it's not from you. Because if it were from you, it would have faded by now. But God-given dreams don't fade. They echo. They wait. They grow in the shadows. And chosen one, yours has been growing. There's a holy fire inside you that's been quietly expanding. You've felt it in moments of worship, in the stillness of the night, in the quiet places where your soul remembers what it was made for. You've glimpsed it in childhood moments, in prophetic words, in divine whispers you didn't fully understand at the time. But now, it's starting to make sense. You weren't called to survive. You were called to build. You weren't anointed to stay hidden. You were anointed to rise. You weren't created to play it safe. You were formed in the image of a God who parts seas, moves mountains, and calls dead things back to life. And yet the voices around you, maybe even the voices within you, have said things like, "Who do you think you are? That's impossible. Be realistic. You don't have what it takes." But let me speak something heaven breathed over you. Faith was never meant to be realistic. Dreams from God will always sound impossible, until they're fulfilled. Then they call it favor. Then they call it destiny. But right now, in the birthing stage, they call it foolish. Don't let their doubt disguise itself as wisdom. Don't mistake their fear for discernment. The Bible is full of people whose dreams looked too big. Joseph dreamed of leadership while wearing prison chains. David was anointed king while still smelling like sheep. Nehemiah dreamed of rebuilding walls no one cared about. Esther stepped into royalty when her people were marked for death. Mary carried the Messiah in her womb and had to endure whispers of shame from those who couldn't comprehend a miracle in process. They all carried something that didn't fit the logic of the world around them. And neither do you. Here's the truth. When God gives a dream, He also gives the grace to carry it. But what He doesn't always give is the crowd to validate it. Sometimes He hides you on purpose. Not because you're forgotten, but because He's forming something holy in secret. That's why your dream feels heavy. That's why the path feels lonely. That's why you've been questioned, ignored, underestimated. It's not because you're wrong. It's because what God has placed inside you is bigger than what they can comprehend. And it's time you stop shrinking your faith to fit into their comfort zones. Stop lowering your voice just to keep their peace. Stop editing your vision to make it more digestible. If God has called you to build an ark, don't let people who've never seen rain talk you out of it. You were never meant to fit their mold. You were meant to break it. So here's the revelation, chosen one. Your dream is not the problem. Their thinking is. Their limited perspective doesn't disqualify your divine assignment. Their inability to see what you see does not mean it's not real. In fact, it might be the very proof that it is. God often gives His boldest visions to the least expected people. People like you. Because when it happens, when the book is written, the business is built, the ministry is launched, the chains are broken, the impact is made, they'll know it wasn't you. It was God through you. And He gets the glory when the vessel looks unqualified. So don't let their doubt become your doctrine. Don't let their fear become your future. What God put inside you is bigger than what they're comfortable with. And that's okay. They don't have to understand it. They don't have to approve it. They don't even have to support it. Because heaven has already stamped it with approved. You don't need permission when you've been given purpose. You don't need applause when you've been given assignment. You don't need a blueprint when you're following the voice of the builder himself. But now, the real question rises. How do you protect your dream in a world that constantly tries to crush it? How do you keep moving forward when the weight of your calling feels too heavy and the journey feels too long? You've received the promise. You feel the purpose. But now, you must walk through the process. Let's go deeper into what that journey really looks like. It's one thing to dream. It's another to be called. Because when God calls you, it rarely makes sense at first. It doesn't always come with thunder and lightning or burning bushes. Sometimes it starts with a holy discontent, something you see in the world that doesn't sit right in your spirit. Sometimes it shows up as an idea too big to shake. And sometimes it comes in the form of a whisper, so soft that you almost doubt you heard anything at all. That's how Moses' calling began. Not when he was floating in the Nile. Not when he grew up in Pharaoh's palace. Not even when he struck down the Egyptian and ran into the desert. No, his true calling came in the dry, lonely place. In the quiet place. In the place of exile, where it felt like everything had fallen apart. Maybe that's where you are right now. You thought by now the dream would be clearer. You thought the vision would have turned into fruit. But instead, you're wandering in your own kind of wilderness, surrounded by sheep instead of people, silence instead of strategy. You feel the fire inside you, but all you see around you is dust. Moses spent 40 years in that wilderness, and then one day, God showed up. Not in the palace, not in the crowds, not in the moment of strength, but in the moment of surrender. A bush caught fire, and the voice of the Lord said, "Moses, Moses." And Moses answered, "Here I am." That's all God needed. He didn't need Moses to have a 5-point plan. He didn't need Moses to have influence. He didn't even need Moses to be confident. He just needed him to be present, to be willing, to say, "Here I am." But even then, Moses hesitated. "Who am I that I should go?" he asked. "What if they don't believe me? I'm not good with words." Moses did what many of us do when the call comes. He disqualified himself. Isn't that what we do, chosen one? God whispers, "Start it," and we say, "But I'm not ready." God says, "Speak it," and we respond, "But I'm not a speaker." God says, "Move," and we freeze, replaying every past failure and flaw. But here's the secret. God never asked Moses to be enough. He only asked Moses to obey, because where you are weak, he is strong. Where you are unsure, he is unwavering. Where you feel unqualified, he brings the anointing. Moses didn't see a deliverer when he looked in the mirror. He saw a man with a stutter, a criminal record, a desert address, and a resume full of regrets. But God saw something else. He saw a shepherd with enough humility to listen. He saw a man shaped by pain, now ready for purpose. He saw a vessel that, though cracked, could still carry glory. And God is looking at you the same way. You may not feel worthy. You may not feel ready. But you are exactly where God wants to begin. Because calling doesn't come to the most polished. It comes to the most available. Moses' story reminds us that the call of God won't always come when you feel strong. In fact, it often comes when you're at your lowest point, because that's when you'll rely on Him the most. So maybe your wilderness hasn't been wasted after all. Maybe the silence has been shaping you. Maybe the delay has been development. And when the call comes, when the bush starts burning and your name is spoken in the Spirit, you'll know that the God who sees you in the desert is the same God who will go with you to the palace. Because here's what God said to Moses, and He's saying it to you right now. I will be with you. That's the difference. That's why your dream isn't too big. That's why your calling isn't too much. Because God isn't asking you to carry it alone. Moses tried to argue his way out of it. He pointed to his weaknesses, his lack of eloquence, his fear. But God didn't change his mind. Instead, He said, I made your mouth. Do you hear the weight of that? God made your mouth. He made your mind. He made your imagination, your heart, your tears, your voice, your passion. And He made your dream. He knew exactly what he was doing when he placed that vision inside of you. And he didn't make a mistake. So stop second-guessing the call just because it came in a season of struggle. Stop thinking you have to be perfect to be purposeful. Stop waiting for everyone else to believe in you before you believe in what God said. Moses led a nation not because he was ready, but because he was obedient. He walked into Egypt with nothing but a staff and a yes. And that was enough. Chosen one, you've been called. And if you're listening to this right now, it's not by accident. It's your burning bush moment. God is speaking to your spirit. He's stirring the vision again. He's reminding you of who you really are. Not just a dreamer. Not just a believer. But a deliverer. Someone chosen to carry something that changes the atmosphere. Someone anointed to move people from bondage to breakthrough. Someone trusted by heaven to dream on a scale that defies logic and demands faith. So now the question isn't if you're called. The question is, will you answer? Sometimes the space between your calling and your crown feels like a contradiction. You get a glimpse of greatness, a dream, a word, a vision that feels too real to ignore. But instead of doors flying open, they start slamming shut. Instead of favor, you face failure. Instead of rising, it feels like you're falling deeper and deeper into places that look nothing like the promise. That's exactly what happened to Joseph. He didn't ask for the dream. God gave it to him. A vision of leadership. A future where even his own family would bow before him. He was just 17, young, bright-eyed, full of faith. And what did it get him? A pit, a betrayal, a one-way trip to slavery. What do you do when the dream is from God, but the path feels like punishment? Joseph must have asked himself that question more than once. Sitting at the bottom of that pit, surrounded by darkness, chained behind a caravan of strangers, his wrists raw with pain, scrubbing floors in a foreign land where no one even knew his name. This didn't feel like destiny. This felt like defeat. But here's what most people miss. The dream isn't dead in the pit. It's being refined. The calling isn't cancelled in the prison. It's being cultivated. Because there's a test that comes before the blessing. And if you don't understand it, you'll think God has abandoned you, when in reality, He's preparing you. See, Joseph had the vision early, but he didn't have the maturity yet. He didn't know how to walk in leadership without arrogance. He didn't yet have the character to carry the crown. So God took him on a journey not to punish him, but to shape him. Every betrayal chiseled his heart. Every disappointment stripped away his pride. Every hidden place forged the humility he would need to stand in the palace. And isn't that what God is doing with you? You've been asking, why is this so hard? Why is this taking so long? But heaven is saying, I'm not just giving you a platform. I'm giving you the strength to stay on it. Because anybody can have a moment of success. But not everybody has the integrity to sustain it. And God loves you too much to bless you with something that your character isn't ready to handle. So if it feels like you're stuck in a place that looks nothing like your promise, if you feel buried, forgotten, misunderstood, you're not being buried. You're being planted. And when the time is right, the same hand that allowed the pit will raise you to the palace. Think about it. Joseph went from prisoner to prime minister in one conversation. One divine moment. One open door that no man could shut. But what was he doing just before that moment? He was still faithful in prison. Still interpreting dreams. Still using his gifts in hidden places. He didn't wait for a spotlight to start being obedient. He didn't say, "I'll serve once I'm promoted." He served in the shadows. And God took notice. That's the test before the blessing. Can you serve when no one's watching? Can you stay faithful when it feels pointless? Can you trust the vision even when the evidence seems to disappear? Joseph did. And so must you. Because the palace isn't proof that God is with you. The pit was. The pit didn't disprove the dream. It proved that it was real enough to be attacked. The enemy doesn't bother trying to destroy what he doesn't fear. And your process is not a sign that God has left you. It's a sign that heaven is serious about your calling. So let me speak this over your life. If you're in the pit right now, hold on. If you're in the prison, stay faithful. If you've been forgotten, God has not forgotten you. Your moment is coming. And when it does, it will make sense. The tears, the betrayal, the loneliness, the closed doors, all of it will become the backdrop of a testimony that glorifies God and silences every lie spoken over your life. But until then, keep passing the test, because the blessing on the other side of this test is bigger than you can imagine. Joseph didn't just receive a position, he saved a nation. And maybe your dream isn't just about you either. Maybe the thing you're carrying will set generations free. Maybe your story will unlock doors for others. Maybe your obedience in the pit is what breaks the chains off someone else's prison. Don't give up just because the dream took a detour. God never lies. And He never wastes pain. If He allowed the test, He intends to reveal the blessing. So hold on, chosen one. The journey may be long. The road may be rough. But you're closer than you think. The prison is not permanent. The pit is not your final chapter. The blessing is coming, and when it arrives, it won't just elevate you. It'll redeem every moment that broke you. So now you've seen the call. You've endured the test. But what happens when the real war is internal? What if the greatest enemy to your dream isn't out there, but within? There are chains you can't see, chains that don't rattle, but they still hold you hostage. And sometimes the deepest prisons are not built of bars or walls. They're made of memories, words that were spoken over you, failures that still echo, shame that clings like a shadow, even in the light. Chosen one, your biggest battle might not be against people or circumstances. It might be against the voice within you, the one that says, "You're not enough. You'll mess it up again. You don't deserve it. Why would God use someone like you?" You see, Satan doesn't always try to stop your dream by attacking it from the outside. Sometimes he infiltrates your spirit, and he plants lies so deep that they sound like truth. And before long, you're living small, not because God didn't call you, but because you stopped believing He could use you. That's what shame does. It builds a cage in your mind, locks the door with regret, and hands you the key, but convinces you you're not worthy to use it. But let me say this clearly. Jesus didn't die so you could live in guilt. He didn't bleed for you to still feel chained. He didn't call you only to let you stay stuck in your past. The Bible says, "Whom the Son sets free is free indeed." Not free eventually. Not free when you finally get it all together. Free now. Free because His blood was enough. So why are you still walking like a prisoner when God already called you free? It's time to break those spiritual chains. Because they're not just holding you back. They're choking the dream inside you. You were never meant to carry the weight of yesterday. You were never designed to haul guilt into your tomorrow. That shame you're carrying, that fear of messing up again, that hidden voice of unworthiness, God is silencing it now. Let me take you into a moment from Scripture. John 8. There's a woman thrown at the feet of Jesus, caught in sin, humiliated, broken. The crowd wants justice. They want her stoned. But Jesus stoops low, writes in the dust, and then says the words that shattered every chain in her spirit. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. And one by one, the accusers walk away. Jesus then turns to her and says, "Where are your accusers?" She says, "There are none." And he responds, "Then neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." He didn't just defend her. He restored her. He erased her shame in front of everyone who tried to define her by it. And chosen one, he's doing the same for you. The accuser's voice has been loud, but heaven's verdict is louder. You are not condemned. You are not your mistakes. You are not your failures. You are not the person you were in your worst season. You are redeemed. You are anointed. You are still chosen. But the chains will stay if you keep feeding the lies. You've got to starve the voices that shrink you, and start feeding the truth that frees you. And here's the truth. God doesn't wait until you feel ready. He calls you while you're still wrestling. He anoints you while you're still healing. He uses you while you're still figuring it out. Because he knows that healing often comes through obedience, not just before it. There's a man in Mark 3 with a withered hand. Jesus says to him, "Stretch out your hand." But the man's hand is crippled, broken, ashamed, and yet he obeys. He stretches out what's broken, and as he stretches, he's healed. Some of you are waiting to be healed before you stretch. But God is saying, stretch in your brokenness, and watch me restore you. Stretch out the shame. Stretch out the fear. Stretch out the regret, the pain, the insecurity. Bring it into the light. Because chains break in the light. You don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to pretend you're perfect. You just have to be willing to be real. With God, and with yourself. The truth is, most people walking in power today are still healing from something yesterday. And that's okay. Because God doesn't use perfect people. He uses surrendered ones. And surrender sounds like this. God, I don't feel worthy, but I trust you. God, I'm afraid, but I'll still go. God, I've failed before, but I believe you can redeem it. When you break free from spiritual chains, your dream starts breathing again. Your voice gets louder. Your steps get bolder. You stop asking for permission to be who God already said you are. Chosen one, you are not disqualified. You are being rebuilt. And the foundation God is laying in this season is stronger than what shame tried to destroy. But you must walk out of the prison. The door is open. The chains are on the ground. Now it's up to you to move. So shake off the guilt. Let go of the fear. Break up with shame. Refuse to carry what Jesus already carried for you. Because on the other side of these broken chains is a boldness you've never known. A freedom you've only dreamed of. And a version of you that's finally unafraid to step into the spotlight God built for your story. You've heard the call. You've endured the test. You've broken free from the chains. Now the only question that remains is, will you step into power? Chosen one, you've heard the call. You've passed the test. You've broken the chains. Now comes the moment that separates dreamers from doers, believers from bold walkers. The moment you step into divine power. It's one thing to know you're called. It's another thing entirely to walk like it. To move with the weight of heaven behind you. To live like the impossible is your birthright, not your barrier. That's what Peter discovered one stormy night on the Sea of Galilee. The winds were raging, the boat was rocking, and Jesus, doing what only Jesus can do, was walking calmly on top of what terrified everyone else. And Peter, bold and trembling all at once, cried out, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come." And Jesus didn't give him a safety net. He didn't explain the physics of water walking. He didn't calm the storm first. He simply said, "Come." No details, no guarantees, just a word. And Peter stepped out. Can you imagine that first foot touching the water? Can you imagine the thoughts screaming in his head? What if I sink? What if I fall? What if I made this up? But despite all the what-ifs, Peter moved. And that's what divine power looks like. Not the absence of fear, but faith that walks anyway. God never said it would feel safe. He never said it would look normal. He just said, "Follow me." Peter walked on water, not because of who he was, but because of who he was focused on. As long as his eyes were locked on Jesus, he did what no human had done before. He stepped into something supernatural. But the moment he looked at the wind, he sank. And isn't that what happens to us? We start with faith. We move with confidence. We finally begin walking in the direction of our calling. And then life shouts louder than faith. The bills come in. The critics speak up. The fears resurface. And slowly, we start looking at the storm more than the Savior. And we begin to sink. Not because the power left, but because our focus did. Let me tell you something powerful. The moment you lock eyes with Jesus again, the miracle resumes. Peter cried out, "Lord, save me!" And immediately, Jesus reached down and pulled him up. Not with rebuke, not with condemnation, but with a hand of grace. That's your God. He's not waiting for you to be flawless. He's waiting for you to be focused. Divine power doesn't come to the perfect. It comes to the brave, to the ones who are willing to leave the boat, the place of comfort, logic, and limitation, and step into the unknown. The boat is safe, yes, but nothing supernatural happens in the boat. The water is where the miracles live. So many people never see the power of God in their lives because they never take the first step. They're waiting for certainty, waiting for signs, waiting for a guarantee. But God is still saying what he said to Peter. Come, come, even if it's messy. Come, even if it's scary. Come, even if no one else understands. Come, even if you feel unqualified. You will never walk in divine power while waiting for perfect conditions. Faith is movement. Faith is messy. Faith is wet feet and wild winds and the adrenaline of knowing you're not supposed to be standing, but somehow you are. And here's the beauty of divine power. It doesn't just carry you, it transforms you. Peter didn't just walk on water. He walked away different. He walked away with a revelation of what was possible when he dared to trust Jesus beyond the edge of logic. That's what's waiting for you. You've been sitting in the boat of what if for too long. It's time to move. It's time to speak. It's time to launch, to build, to create, to believe like never before. God has already given the word. He's already stirred your spirit. Now, the step is yours. And yes, it may feel foolish. Yes, it may look reckless. But faith is never wasted. Not when it's rooted in the voice of Jesus. Peter didn't have a plan. He had a word. And so do you. Come. Come out of the fear. Come out of the silence. Come out of the shadows of small thinking. Come out of the boat of comfort. Because divine power doesn't rest on passive hearts. It rests on the bold, the obedient, the surrendered. And if you'll move, even with trembling knees and unsure steps, God will meet you. He'll hold you. He'll guide you. He'll prove to you that the same power that raised Jesus from the grave is now alive in you. Chosen one, you weren't made to sit still while the world stays broken. You weren't saved to play it safe. You were filled with the Spirit of the living God, so you could walk in power. Supernatural, mountain-moving, miracle-birthing power. But that power activates when you move. So this is the line in the sand, the edge of the boat, the moment where you decide, will I stay comfortable, or will I walk in the calling? The water is waiting. Jesus is calling, and the dream inside you is ready to breathe. So rise, chosen one. This is your moment. This is your moment of decision, your turning point, the place where the dream God gave you stops being something you hide in your heart and becomes something you walk out with your life. You can't go back to normal after this. You've seen too much, heard too much, felt too much in your spirit to pretend it was all in your imagination. God is awakening something in you that the world tried to bury. He's igniting fire where there was only smoke. He's resurrecting purpose where fear had laid it to rest. And now comes the moment where you either stay in the boat or you walk on water. You've waited for confirmation. Here it is. You've prayed for clarity. This is it. You've asked for a sign. Look around. Look within. The sign is you. You're not listening to this message by accident. This is heaven's summons. This is the King calling his warrior forward. Not because you have all the answers. Not because you're ready in your own strength. But because you're willing. God does not anoint the arrogant. He doesn't use the ones who think they've got it all figured out. He uses the ones who say, God, I don't know how, but I trust you. Is that you? Can you say that right now? Because that's what this moment demands. Faith, not formulas. It demands movement, not just meditation. Obedience, not just observation. Fire, not just feelings. God is saying, enough waiting, enough shrinking, enough apologizing for dreaming too big. They said your dream was too big, but they didn't know your God. They called it unrealistic, but they didn't know the size of your anointing. They tried to tame your roar, dim your light, fold your wings, but they didn't create you. They didn't knit you together in your mother's womb. They didn't call you before time began. They didn't place purpose in your bones and fire in your belly. God did. And He's not asking for permission to move through you. He's waiting for your yes. The world is desperate for voices that carry the sound of heaven. It's longing for leaders who are not motivated by applause, but by assignment. And you, yes, you have been chosen to be one of them. But here's the truth that separates the called from the commissioned. The dream doesn't manifest just because it's divine. It manifests when you partner with heaven and take the step. That step might look like starting the business, writing the book, applying for the position, opening your mouth when fear tells you to stay silent, praying boldly when doubt tells you to be quiet, standing firm when others walk away. That's divine power in motion. God is calling you to build what hasn't been built, to create what hasn't been seen, to walk paths no one around you has ever dared to take, because you weren't called to blend in. You were called to break through. But breakthrough doesn't come to the passive. It comes to the bold. And the bold aren't the ones who feel no fear. They're the ones who obey in spite of it. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Not for me, not for the crowd, but for heaven. Decide. Right here. Right now. Decide that you're done letting fear lead. Decide that small thinking has no place in your life anymore. Decide that the dream God gave you is not optional. It's holy. And treat it like that. Guard it. Feed it. Speak life over it. Fight for it. Because if God trusted you enough to give it, He also equipped you enough to carry it. And if the journey feels overwhelming, remember this. You're not walking alone. The same God who called you is walking beside you. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is living inside you. The same heaven that dreamed through you is now backing you. So what will you do? Will you go back to the boat? Or will you walk? Will you keep asking for signs? Or will you move by faith? Will you keep waiting to be ready? Or will you say yes with trembling hands and a trusting heart? This is your moment. Not next week. Not after you get it all figured out. Now. The dream isn't too big. The calling isn't too much. The vision isn't unrealistic. It's God-sized, because it was never meant to fit in human limitations. So rise, chosen one. Stand tall in the storm. Speak what God placed in your mouth. Build what He placed in your hands. Walk like you were born for this, because you were. Let that word settle in your spirit. Let the wind of it wrap around your soul like a gentle covering. You've been fighting so long, pushing so hard, carrying so much. And in all of that striving, maybe you forgot this one truth. God never gave you the dream to torment you. He gave it to bless you, to reveal a glimpse of what He saw in you before anyone else could, before your family doubted you, before life bruised you, before the world labeled you. God already saw purpose. God already spoke destiny. God already chose you. And here you are, still standing. Maybe not where you thought you'd be. Maybe not as confident as you'd like. But you're here. And you're listening. And that means it's not over. The dream still lives. The promise still holds. The vision still breathes, because it came from a God who never lies and never fails. And when God begins something, He finishes it. You may have taken detours. You may have wrestled with delay. You may have walked through fire and thought, how could anything good come from this? But God was never absent. Even in the silence, He was speaking. Even in the pain, He was pruning. Even in the waiting, He was working. He's not just the God of the mountaintop. He's the God of the middle, the God of the mess, the God of the midnight hour when everything seems lost and yet, somehow, there's still a flicker of hope. That flicker is faith. And faith is how you hold on when everything else is telling you to let go. So if all you have left is a mustard seed of faith, that's enough. If all you can do today is whisper, yes, that's enough. If your steps are slow, unsure, trembling, but still moving, that's more than enough. Because God's strength is made perfect in weakness. His glory shines brightest through surrendered vessels. And His promise doesn't expire because of your past. Listen to me. You didn't miss it. You're not too late. You're not disqualified. You're not too broken. You are in the perfect place for a miracle. God is restoring your hope. He's reigniting your passion. He's preparing you to walk in rooms you never thought you'd enter, speak to people you never thought would listen, build what others said couldn't be done. But this time, it won't be out of striving. It will be out of trust. You won't have to force it. You'll flow in it. Because when you walk with God, Obedience unlocks overflow. So dream again. Speak it aloud. Write it down. Take the step. And remember this. You don't have to do it all at once. You just have to do the next right thing. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. You don't have to impress anyone. You just have to please the one who called you. And he already delights in you. So carry your dream with joy again. Pray over it. Protect it. Nurture it. And watch. Watch how God breathes life into it in ways you never expected. This is not the end. It's the beginning of a new boldness, a new authority, a new chapter where you walk not with fear, but with fire, because you've seen the storm, you've passed through the fire, you've heard the call, and now, you rise. Chosen one, your dream isn't too big. It's exactly the size it needs to be, to reveal the size of your God. If this message stirred something in your spirit, if it reminded you of a dream you buried, or reignited a fire you thought had gone out, don't keep it to yourself. Let it breathe. Let it live in your voice, your actions, your story. And if you're willing, share in the comments what God reminded you of today. Even just a few words, a dream, a verse, a simple, "That was for me," could be the encouragement someone else is praying for right now. This space is a community of chosen ones just like you, walking through fire, holding on to faith, and refusing to let go of what heaven has spoken. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. And your voice matters here. So if this resonated with you, let us know. Your story could be the spark that lights another heart on fire. And if you need prayer for the journey ahead, don't be afraid to ask. We're walking this out together, step by step, with our eyes on the one who called us. Keep pressing forward, dreamer. Heaven sees you, and what's coming next is worth every step of faith you're about to take. This message was narrated by AI, but its truth is timeless and its impact is real.